Rift is an HD fantasy game that is set in a world that's actually under attack from many different dimensions. Fictionally, the world is at a nexus of many different planes, and so it's an IP that lets us do all kinds of really cool, interesting visuals and interesting, cool things that you're just not going to see anywhere else. I've worked in online games in general, actually. My first job was working on text-based games when I was 16 years old. You know, the name of the series that I worked on back then, it was Scepter and then Gemstone. And so after that, you know, ended up working for the EverQuest franchise on both EverQuest, its expansions, and EverQuest 2. And then just recently came to Tryon, like I said, about 6 months ago. And so it's really interesting, taking all of that perspective from all of those years and applying them to creating really a new generation of MMOs entirely. And the best thing about it is, across our team, there's people with tons of experience. If you forget about the dozens of console games that half of the team has worked on, the other half of the team has shipped or had development responsibilities on over 27 different MMOs. That gives us a unique perspective across a lot more than just my lifetime. Tryon's architecture is built all around the idea of dynamic content. What dynamic content really lets us do in game terms is it lets us add new, interesting, interactive elements on top of an already rich and vibrant static world. What we're doing is we have MMO elements that people enjoy, and we are evolving those, but then on top of that is this event layer. So think of it as events that are happening all the time. Some of them are happening in reaction to things you're doing. Some of them are happening because of time passing. Others of them are happening to advance a great story. And so there's this other layer of change that's always going on. Some changes are temporary, but some of the changes are permanent. And over time, especially as we introduce new content, what you'll find is that the server that you play on isn't going to be the exact same as my server. Or the server you play on, if you replay it, isn't going to be the same exact experience. The Rift invasions themselves, the type that we're demoing here today, in fact, is one type of dynamic content. It's an event that can happen anywhere in the world based on certain other elements that are going on behind the scenes in the world, but they all do have context. And so it's an event that can happen anywhere in the world. It tells a little story of its own, can end in a mini-boss, can end in a big boss. Some of them are group-based, some of them are solo-based. The one that we're demoing here tonight is a wave-based, it's a simple wave-based combat, where it's you versus waves of creatures, and you are trying to fend off this invasion. The fiction behind Rifts is you walk up to them, and the idea is if you see one that's not open yet, it looks as a tear, where it just looks like this really cool distortion in the world. By triggering that rift, what you're actually doing is you're causing the invasion to happen before the planar forces are ready. So you're actually getting an advantage on them. And you're able to then play through that event and with lots of different people, grouped and not grouped, and all get rewarded for what you're doing. And so that's just one type of the many types of dynamic content that we have. Some of our dynamic content is scripted by hand. For example, if somebody did want to set up the typical merchant that travels the entire globe, that would be set up by a person, and they would have behaviors and desires for places, for places that merchant would want to go. Where if you look at Rifts, which is a different subsystem of dynamic content entirely, some of that is created by hand, and some of that is generated by conditions in the world. So it's not necessarily machine-generated content, but it is world-generated content. But on the other hand, if you want to get into bigger things, we can talk about big dynamic raids or world rollout events that would still go back to being handcrafted by designers, yet their progress would be heavily influenced by what the players do. I don't think old-style content is going to go the way of the dodo at all, really. Because if you think about it, what we think of as static content today includes, like, for example, a quest path through the world, or a quest path through zones. In the generation of games before this, including one of the games I worked on, the original EverQuest and EverQuest 2, there was no such thing as quest paths. So really all you had was dungeon content. And so when dungeon content existed, and then people added quest paths, Dungeons didn't go away. People just use them differently. So we expect the same thing will happen. Yes, there's all of this dynamic content. The static content will still be there. It'll just be people will be using it differently, and that's okay. Rift: Plains of Telara will be out for the PC in 2011.